You know that feeling you're stuck on hold forever, you get a product that's broken right out of the box, or you just feel totally invisible to a company? We've all been there. But today, we're not just going to vent about bad customer service. Nope, we are going to break down the actual playbook for turning those complete disasters into, well, moments of triumph. All right, let's get into it.
Just look at that picture. You can almost feel it, can't you? That slow burn of frustration, that feeling of being totally powerless. That's our starting line for this whole explainer. Because understanding that feeling, really getting it, is the absolute first step to being able to fix it.
So, things are going to go wrong. It's inevitable, right? The real question is, what's the blueprint for making them right? How do you take a customer who's at their wit's end and turn them into someone who's fiercely loyal? That's the puzzle we're tackling today, and trust me, the answer is pretty fascinating. Okay, so before we can start fixing things, we have to understand what's broken in the first place. So let's kind of put on our detective hats for a minute and really dissect the anatomy of a service breakdown.
When you boil it all down, a service breakdown is just a broken promise. It's that gap between what a customer was led to believe, from an ad, a sales pitch, or just plain old common sense, and what they actually experienced. It could be something as simple as a cold coffee or as massive as a critical software bug. But the result, it's always the same. A let-down customer.
And that brings us to a super important point. What are these expectations to begin with? If you don't know what your customers are hoping for, you're basically just flying blind. And as we're about to see, what people expect is surprisingly layered.
I want you to think about the last time you had a great service experience. It probably wasn't just about getting your problem solved, was it? It was about feeling like the person on the other end of the phone actually gave a damn. They were friendly, they listened, they showed some empathy. That's the human side of things, and a lot of the time, it's way more important than the technical fix itself.
But of course, it's not all about feelings. We also have some very real, very tangible expectations. We want the thing to be in stock, we want it to be worth the money we paid for it, we want it to be easy to use, and hey, if something goes wrong, we do not want to have to jump through a million hoops to get it fixed. We just want a fast, painless solution.
So we know why breakdowns happen. But what about when they happen? How do we deal with the human side of this whole mess, especially when that human is, well, let's just say they're having a tough day? That's what this next section is all about. Think of it as a field guide for decoding different types of customers.
First up, the demanding customer. Now, this isn't always a bad person. They just have a really high need for control. They often feel like they've been wronged, and they are determined, absolutely determined, to get what they think they deserve. For them, it's not just about a solution, it's about a victory.
The secret here is to completely avoid a power struggle. You have to stay calm, be respectful, but also be firm and fair. You listen to what they want, but, and this is the game changer, instead of telling them all the things you can't do, you immediately pivot the conversation to what you can do. That one little move shifts the entire dynamic from a fight to a collaboration.
All right, next we have the indecisive customer. Picture them as being kind of lost in a forest of choices. They're not trying to be difficult. They are genuinely overwhelmed, and they're probably a little scared of making the wrong call. Your job here is to be their guide.
Patience is your absolute superpower here. So instead of pushing them to make a decision, you gently pull them along. You ask these great open-ended questions, not just yes or no, to help them figure out what they actually need. You're not making the choice for them, you're just clearing the path so they can make it confidently themselves.
And now, for the big one, the angry customer. When those emotions are running hot, our first instinct is usually to just jump in and solve the problem. But believe it or not, that is the wrong move. Before you can fix a single thing, your number one job is to manage the emotion. Let's talk psychology for a sec. The most important thing you can possibly do is just listen. Let them get it all out. Seriously. When you interrupt, you're basically sending a signal that their feelings don't matter. But by listening without judgment, you validate what they're feeling. And once someone feels truly heard, you'll see their anger start to just melt away, and they become way more open to finding a solution.
So that brings us to the actual tools you can use when the pressure is really on. Think of this next part as your de-escalation playbook, a set of tried-and-true strategies for turning a really tense moment into a positive one.
Mark Twain said that in a tense customer situation, it could not be more true. The words you choose can either light up a path to a solution, or they can leave you both stumbling around in the dark.
Just look at this table. It shows how powerful these tiny shifts in language can be. Instead of the word problem, which sounds negative and like a dead end, you can use situation or challenge.
Instead of a hard no, you immediately pivot to, here's what I can do for you. This isn't about being tricky. It's about framing the conversation in a way that opens up possibilities, instead of just shutting them down.
And this all comes together beautifully in what's called the emotion-reducing model. I want you to notice the order here. You start by focusing on the customer, you let them explain how they're feeling, and then you reconnect. It's only after you've done all that that you can finally move on to solving the actual problem. It's a simple but incredibly powerful mantra. Address the person first, then address the problem.
Okay, so we've de-escalated the situation. The customer is calm, they feel like they've been heard, and they're ready to listen. Now it's time for the main event. Actually fixing the darn thing. Let's look at a structured process for moving from that breakdown to a full-on recovery.
At the heart of any great recovery is a clear, logical framework. And this is it, the 6-step problem-solving model. This is your secret weapon for getting to the right solution every single time. This isn't about just winging it. It's a systematic approach that makes sure nothing gets missed.
So, let's walk through it real quick. First, you identify the real problem, not just the symptom on the surface. Then, you gather the facts, kind of like a detective building a case. From there, you brainstorm some possible solutions, and hey, don't be afraid to get creative. Next, you weigh the pros and cons of each one, you make a clear decision, and then, and this is the part most people forget, you follow up to monitor the results and make sure the fix actually, fixed it.
This diagram gives us such a great bird's-eye view of the entire service recovery process. You can see it's not just one single thing, but a whole series of interconnected steps. And notice what's sitting right there in the middle of it all? The customer. So if we had to boil that whole process down, what are the absolute must-do essentials? Well, it really comes down to these 5 core actions. First, a sincere apology. It goes a long, long way. Then, take action right away to show you're serious. Throughout the whole thing, show some genuine compassion. Often, some kind of compensation is the right move. And finally, always, and I mean always, follow up to close that loop and make sure the customer is truly happy.
And that leaves us with a really fascinating thought to chew on. When you handle a service failure with this level of skill and real empathy, can you actually build a stronger, more loyal bond with that customer than if nothing had ever gone wrong in the first place? It's a powerful idea and definitely one worth thinking about.